The glass shattered against the wall inches from my head, red wine exploding like arterial spray across the cream-colored paint. I didn't flinch anymore. That instinct had died somewhere between the first time Marcus raised his voice and the 100th time he raised his hand. My purse was already on my shoulder, my shoes already on my feet. I'd learned to stay ready, to keep one foot perpetually angled toward the door. You think you can just walk out on me, Claire? His voice was a razor wrapped in silk, the way it always was right before things got worse. After everything I've done for you? Everything he'd done. The phrase was almost funny. He'd isolated me from my friends, convinced me to quit my job at the marketing firm because he made enough for both of us, moved me into his downtown penthouse where the walls were as cold as his eyes when he looked at me lately. Everything he'd done had been about control, about making me small enough to fit into the cage he'd built. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I didn't answer him. Words were ammunition he'd use against me later, twisted and reshaped until I couldn't remember what I'd actually said. Instead, I moved toward the door with the careful steps of someone navigating a minefield. 3 years of this dance had taught me the choreography. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak. Don't give him anything to grab onto, physically or emotionally. Claire. His hand caught my wrist, fingers digging into bone. Not hard enough to bruise where anyone could see. He'd learned that lesson after I'd worn long sleeves to his company dinner and his boss had asked questions. We're not done talking. We are. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I'm leaving, Marcus. Tonight. For good. His grip tightened, and for a moment I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not remorse. Never remorse. Calculation. He was weighing his options, deciding how far he could push before neighbors called the police again. The last time had cost him a warning and a smirk from the responding officer who'd clearly bought his story about a misunderstanding between lovers. Then his phone rang. The sound cut through the tension like a blade, and his attention fractured just enough. His grip loosened as he glanced at the screen, and I didn't waste the opportunity. I yanked my arm free and bolted, my hand already on the doorknob, turning, pulling, stumbling into the hallway of the luxury building where everything was marble and chrome and cold, cold, cold. Behind me, Marcus shouted something, but I was already running, my ballet flats slapping against the polished floor as I hit the stairwell. 12 floors. I took them 2 at a time, my breath burning in my lungs, my pulse hammering in my ears. Any second, I expected to hear his footsteps behind me, to feel his hand on my shoulder yanking me backward. But the sound never came. I burst through the ground floor exit into the October night, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. No coat. I'd left it hanging by the door, but going back was impossible. I'd rather freeze than spend another second in that apartment. The street was busy with Friday night traffic, people laughing as they headed to dinner or shows, couples walking hand in hand, everyone living lives that didn't involve counting the seconds until they could escape. I kept walking, no destination in mind, just distance. Blocks blurred together until my feet ached and my breath came in visible puffs. When I finally stopped, I found myself in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, older buildings with character instead of the sterile perfection of Marcus's world. And there, glowing like a beacon in the darkness, was a bar. The sign above the door read Valentino's, in elegant script, warm light spilling through windows that promised refuge. I'd never been much of a drinker, but right now I needed walls between me and the world, needed to sit down before my legs gave out, needed to be somewhere Marcus would never think to look for me. The heavy wooden door opened with a satisfying weight, and warmth enveloped me immediately. The interior was all dark wood and leather, intimate booths lining the walls, a long bar stretching along one side where bottles gleamed like jewels behind the polished surface. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers, the kind of music that felt like silk sliding over skin. It was early enough that the place was only half full, well-dressed patrons speaking in low voices over cocktails and wine. I felt suddenly conscious of my appearance, my hair probably a mess from running, my simple jeans and sweater nowhere near the elegance of the women in this space. But the hostess, a striking woman with silver hair and knowing eyes, simply smiled and gestured toward the bar. "Sit anywhere you'd like, dear. Someone will be right with you." I chose a stool at the far end of the bar, partially hidden by a decorative column, and set my purse on the polished mahogany surface. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading, replaced by the hollow realization that I'd actually done it. I'd left. No plan, nowhere to go, just the clothes on my back and whatever cash was in my wallet. "Rough night?" The voice came from behind the bar, deep and smooth with an accent I couldn't quite place. "Italian, maybe?" I looked up and forgot how to breathe. He was tall, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his black dress shirt in a way that suggested both strength and elegance. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and strong lines softened only by a mouth that curved with what might have been amusement. But it was his eyes that held me frozen, dark as espresso and just as rich, studying me with an intensity that made me feel both exposed and strangely safe. "Something like that." I managed to find my voice, though it came out quieter than I intended. He moved with a grace unusual for a man his size, setting a napkin in front of me with hands that were strong and capable, a thin scar running across the knuckles of his right hand. "What can I get you?" I had no idea. I'd never ordered a drink without Marcus there to decide for me, to tell me what I wanted, what would be appropriate, what wouldn't embarrass him. The freedom to choose paralyzed me. "I don't know," I admitted, meeting those dark eyes. "What would you recommend for someone who's having the worst and best night of her life simultaneously?" Something flickered in his expression, a recognition that made me wonder what he saw when he looked at me. "That sounds like it requires something special." He reached for a bottle I didn't recognize, his movements precise and practiced. "Trust me?" The question felt weighted with more than just drink orders, but I nodded anyway. "Why not? I'm apparently making all kinds of questionable decisions tonight." His lips curved into something that was almost a smile, and he began mixing ingredients with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. I watched, mesmerized by the economy of his movements, the way his hands worked with such certainty. When he finally slid the glass toward me, the liquid inside glowed amber in the low light. "An old-fashioned," he said. "Classic, strong, with just enough sweetness to take the edge off the bitter." I lifted the glass, our fingers brushing for a moment, and the contact sent an unexpected jolt through me. Not fear, like when Marcus touched me. Something else entirely, something that made my skin feel too warm and my pulse quicken in a way I'd forgotten was possible. The drink was perfect, smooth and complex, and I took another sip before setting it down. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed. I'm Dante." He extended his hand across the bar, and I took it, his grip firm but gentle. "Dante Valentino. Claire." I didn't offer my last name. Some instinct told me to hold something back, even though this stranger felt safer than the man I'd lived with for 3 years. "Is this your place?" "It is." Pride colored his voice as he glanced around the bar. "My family's, technically, but I run the day-to-day operations." "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "It feels safe." His eyes sharpened on that word, but he didn't press. Instead, he poured himself a small measure of whiskey, a silent companionship that loosened something tight in my chest. We didn't speak for a moment, just existed in comfortable silence while the jazz played and the bar hummed with quiet conversations around us. "So," Dante said eventually, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "The worst and best night. Want to talk about it?" I should have said no. Should have kept my mess to myself, finished my drink, and figured out where I was going to sleep tonight. But something about the way he looked at me, the genuine interest in his eyes without any of the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, made the words spill out. "I left someone tonight. Someone I should have left a long time ago." I traced the rim of my glass with one finger. "I don't have anywhere to go. No job. Most of my friends stopped calling after he convinced me they were bad influences. I'm basically starting from zero." "Not zero," Dante said quietly. "You have yourself back." That's more valuable than most people realize. The simple validation made my eyes burn with tears I refused to let fall. Is it pathetic that I'm sitting in a bar talking to a stranger about my problems? No. His hand covered mine on the bar, warm and solid. It's brave. You did the hardest part already. Everything else is just logistics. I looked down at his hand on mine, at the scar across his knuckles, and wondered what story it told. That sounds like the voice of experience. Everyone has things they've had to walk away from. He withdrew his hand, but the warmth lingered. The question is what you walk toward next. Before I could respond, the door opened and 3 men walked in. They were dressed expensively, but something about them set my teeth on edge immediately. The way they moved, the way they scanned the room like predators assessing territory, the cold calculation in their eyes. I felt Dante's entire demeanor shift beside me, the relaxed bartender disappearing and something harder taking his place. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and when he moved away from me to greet the newcomers, there was a coiled tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there moments before. Gentlemen. His voice was perfectly polite, perfectly controlled. Welcome to Valentino's. What can I get you? The tallest of the 3, a man with silver at his temples and a smile that never reached his eyes, leaned against the bar. Dante. Good to see you. We were hoping to discuss some business. This is a bar, Vincent. I don't discuss business here. Dante's tone was pleasant but immovable. You know that. Vincent's eyes slid past Dante to me, and I felt stripped naked under his gaze. Not sexually, but assessed, catalogued, filed away as potentially useful information. New girl? A customer. The edge in Dante's voice was subtle but unmistakable. Who deserves to enjoy her drink in peace? Something unspoken passed between the 2 men, a battle of wills waged in silence. Finally, Vincent inclined his head. Of course. We'll wait for you in the back. He and his companions moved toward a door marked private, but not before Vincent gave me one more lingering look that made my skin crawl. When they disappeared, Dante turned back to me, and I saw frustration flash across his features before he smoothed it away. I'm sorry about that, he said. Some clients are more persistent than others. Clients? I echoed, something cold settling in my stomach. What kind of business are you in, exactly? The bar business. He met my eyes steadily. And investments. Property. Various interests. It should have sounded innocent, but something in his tone, in the way those men had looked at him with both deference and wariness, told me there was more to the story. But tonight, after Marcus, after 3 years of lies, I found I didn't care. Whatever Dante Valentino was, he'd shown me more genuine kindness in 30 minutes than Marcus had in 3 years. I should probably go, I said, finishing my drink and reaching for my purse. Let you deal with your business. Wait. Dante's hand caught my wrist, and I flinched instinctively before I could stop myself. He released me immediately, pain flickering in his eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, he took a breath, choosing his words carefully. You said you don't have anywhere to go tonight. I'll figure something out. A hotel, maybe. Though I was mentally calculating the cash in my wallet and wondering if it would be enough for anything decent. The apartment above the bar is empty, Dante said. It's small, but it's safe and it's warm. You could stay there tonight. Just tonight, he added quickly, as if sensing my hesitation. No strings, no expectations. Just a safe place to sleep until you figure out your next move. Every warning bell I possessed should have been screaming. Strange man, strange offer, too good to be true. But I looked into those dark eyes and saw only genuine concern, the same expression I'd seen when I'd flinched at his touch. And I was so tired of being afraid, so tired of calculating every interaction, so tired of living in a cage. Why would you do that? I asked. You don't know me. I know enough. His voice was soft. I know the look of someone who ran from something terrible. And I know what it's like to need refuge. The door marked "Private" opened, and Vincent appeared, his expression impatient. "Dante. We're waiting." 2 minutes, Dante said without looking at him. "To me," he added, "the offer stands. No pressure." I should have walked out. Should have found a hotel, called one of the friends I'd abandoned, figured this out on my own. But something about Dante Valentino made me want to trust again, made me want to believe that not everyone was like Marcus, that kindness could exist without conditions. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Thank you." His smile was brief but genuine, transforming his severe features into something almost beautiful. "Finish your drink. I'll be back in 10 minutes to show you upstairs." He disappeared through the private door, leaving me alone at the bar with my thoughts and the melting ice in my empty glass. The female bartender who'd been serving the other end came over, her expression sympathetic. "Another?" she asked, gesturing to my glass. "No, thank you. I'm okay." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Fair warning, honey. Dante's a good man, one of the best I've worked for. But he's complicated. His family, his business, the people who come through that door," she nodded toward the private room. "It's not a simple life. Just keep that in mind." Before I could respond, she moved away to serve another customer, leaving me with more questions than answers. What had I just agreed to? What world had I just stepped into? And why did the danger implicit in her warning make my pulse race in a way that felt more like anticipation than fear? When Dante emerged from the private room 15 minutes later, his expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Whatever had been discussed behind that door hadn't been pleasant. Vincent and his companions left through a side exit, and Dante came directly to me. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, gathering my purse and sliding off the bar stool. My legs were unsteady, whether from exhaustion, alcohol, or the surreal nature of the entire evening, I couldn't say. Dante led me through a door behind the bar and up a narrow staircase, his presence a solid warmth at my back. The apartment was exactly as he'd described, small but immaculate. A studio space with exposed brick walls, a kitchenette in one corner, a bed with pristine white linens, and a door that presumably led to a bathroom. It smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something that reminded me of the way Dante had smelled when he'd leaned close to make my drink. "There are towels in the bathroom," he said, handing me a key. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me, and I'll knock 3 times so you know it's me." He paused at the threshold. "There's a phone on the nightstand. My number is programmed in if you need anything." "Dante," I started, not sure what I wanted to say. "Thank you. Really. I don't know why you're being so kind to a stranger, but I'm grateful." His eyes held mine for a long moment, and I saw something there I couldn't quite name. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. "We're all strangers until we're not," he said finally. "Get some sleep, Claire. Tomorrow things will look different." After he left, I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of the day. I'd left Marcus. I'd run with nothing but my purse and desperation. And I'd ended up here, in a stranger's apartment above a bar, protected by a man whose kindness felt almost as dangerous as Marcus's cruelty, but in an entirely different way. I moved to the window, looking down at the street below. A black car was parked across from the bar, engine idling, and I could see the silhouettes of people inside. Something about it felt wrong, watchful, predatory. But exhaustion was pulling at me, and I was too tired to process any more danger tonight. I showered, washing away the wine stains and the fear and the last 3 years, then crawled into the bed still wearing my clothes. The sheets smelled like fabric softener and safety, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I could actually sleep without one ear listening for footsteps, without one eye on the door, without my body tense for whatever would come next. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. But sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept replaying the evening, Marcus's rage, the sound of breaking glass, the feeling of running until my lungs burned. And then Dante's face, those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I'd ever built. The way his hand had felt covering mine. The scar across his knuckles that spoke of violence but somehow didn't frighten me. I'd escaped one dangerous man only to accept help from another. Because I wasn't naive enough to believe Dante Valentino was safe. The way those men had looked at him, the private meetings, the warning from the bartender, even the elegance of this bar that spoke of money that came from somewhere. But there was a crucial difference I was only beginning to understand. Marcus's danger was in his unpredictability, his need to hurt me to feel powerful. Whatever danger Dante represented, it wasn't directed at me. He'd offered safety with no conditions, had given me space to breathe when I desperately needed it, had looked at me like I mattered without trying to take anything in return. I must have eventually dozed off, because I woke to the sound of voices outside, harsh and angry. Adrenaline flooded my system as I sat up, heart hammering, immediately thinking Marcus had somehow found me. But the voices were speaking Italian, rapid and furious, and one of them was definitely Dante. I crept to the window, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain. Below, Dante stood in the street facing two men I didn't recognize, his posture aggressive in a way I hadn't seen before. Even from here, I could see the anger radiating from him, barely contained violence in every line of his body. One of the men made a gesture, dismissive and condescending, and Dante moved so fast I almost missed it. One moment they were talking, the next Dante had the man against the wall, forearm across his throat, saying something low and dangerous that made the man's companion step back with raised hands. I should have been terrified. Should have been packing my things and running again. But instead, I felt a strange sense of safety watching Dante defend whatever boundary had been crossed. This wasn't Marcus's uncontrolled rage. This was calculated, purposeful protection of something that mattered. After a moment, Dante released the man, who stumbled away rubbing his throat. More words were exchanged, and then the two men got into the black car I'd noticed earlier and drove away. Dante stood in the street for a long moment, his head tilted back as if asking the universe for patience, before disappearing back inside the bar. I returned to bed, my mind churning. Tomorrow I would ask questions. Tomorrow I would figure out who Dante Valentino really was and what I'd gotten myself into. Tomorrow I would make a plan for my life that didn't involve running or hiding or depending on anyone else. But tonight, despite everything I'd seen, I felt safer than I had in years. And that terrified me more than anything else. Morning light filtered through the unfamiliar windows, painting golden stripes across the white sheets. For a confused moment, I didn't know where I was, and panic seized my chest until the previous night came flooding back. Marcus. The wine glass. Running. Dante's dark eyes and the safety of this small apartment above a bar that felt like stepping into another world entirely. I checked my phone for the first time since leaving, and my stomach dropped. 43 missed calls from Marcus. 27 text messages that ranged from apologetic to threatening to desperate. The most recent one, sent at 3 a.m, made my blood run cold. I know you're scared, Claire. But you can't hide from me. I'll find you. We belong together. You'll see that soon enough. My hands trembled as I deleted the messages, blocked his number, and tried to tell myself that he couldn't possibly know where I was. But Marcus had resources, connections through his corporate law firm. If he wanted to find me badly enough, eventually he would. A soft knock interrupted my spiral into anxiety. 3 deliberate taps, just as Dante had promised. Claire. It's me. I opened the door to find him holding a tray with coffee, fresh pastries, and what looked like fruit. He'd changed from last night's formal attire into dark jeans and a simple black Henley that somehow made him look more dangerous, more real. There were shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. I wasn't sure what you'd like, he said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. So I brought options. You didn't have to do this. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly conscious of my rumpled clothes, my unbrushed hair, the fact that I'd slept in a stranger's apartment and woken up to find him bringing me breakfast like this was normal. I wanted to. His eyes searched my face, and I wondered what he saw there. You looked like you could use some kindness last night. The simple statement nearly undid me. I'd been living so long in a world where kindness came with conditions, where every gesture was calculated for maximum leverage, that genuine care felt almost painful. I sank into the chair and wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, letting the warmth ground me. I saw you last night, I said quietly. Outside. With those men. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us. He sat in the chair across from me, his movements careful, deliberate. What did you see? Enough to know that you're not just a bar owner. I met his eyes. Enough to know that whatever you're involved in is dangerous. He was silent for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. And that scares you? It should, I replied. But honestly? After 3 years with Marcus, I'm not sure I know the difference between safe and dangerous anymore. He seemed safe when I met him. Successful lawyer, good family, respectable. And he turned out to be the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. Dante leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm going to be honest with you, Claire, because you deserve that. My family's business isn't entirely legal. We own legitimate enterprises, like this bar, but there are other interests. Investments that exist in gray areas. And yes, sometimes that means dealing with people who operate in darker spaces than most. The Mafia, I said, the word hanging between us like smoke. That's a term with a lot of history and assumptions attached to it. His mouth curved slightly. But essentially, yes. My family has been part of that world for 3 generations. I grew up in it. And now I run a significant portion of our East Coast operations. I should have stood up. Should have thanked him for his honesty and left immediately. Instead, I found myself asking, why are you telling me this? Because I don't want to lie to you. He held my gaze. You've been lied to enough. And because if you stay here, even for another day, you should know what you're walking into. And what am I walking into? Protection, he said simply. Whatever else I am, whatever my business entails, I protect what's mine. If you're under my roof, that protection extends to you. No one will hurt you here. Not those men from last night, not anyone else, and certainly not your ex-boyfriend if he comes looking. The certainty in his voice sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. What happened last night? With those men? Dante's jaw tightened. They wanted to use my bar for a meeting I didn't approve. There are rules in my world, Claire. Territories, boundaries, codes that keep the peace. They tried to push past those boundaries, and I reminded them why that's a bad idea. By threatening them. By enforcing the rules. He stood, moving to the window, his broad shoulders blocking the light. I don't apologize for what I am or what I do. But I also don't bring unnecessary violence into spaces that should be safe. This bar is neutral ground. People come here to relax, to forget their troubles for a while. Last night, those men wanted to compromise that. I couldn't allow it. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile the man who'd made me a perfect drink and offered me refuge with the man who'd had someone by the throat in the street. But somehow, the contradiction made sense. Dante operated by a code, just a different one than the rest of society. I need to figure out what to do, I said finally. I can't stay here indefinitely, hiding from my life. No, Dante agreed, turning back to me. But you can stay until you have a plan. And I can help you make one, if you'll let me. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something dark crossed his features. I need to take this. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. He was gone before I could ask questions, leaving me alone with half-eaten breakfast and a mind full of dangerous thoughts. I should leave. Find a hotel, contact a women's shelter, reach out to my old friend Sarah who tried to warn me about Marcus months ago. Build a life that didn't involve beautiful, dangerous men who made me feel things I had no business feeling. Instead, I showered, borrowed a t-shirt from the dresser that smelled like cedar and Dante, and tried to make myself presentable with the limited resources in my purse. By the time he returned an hour later, I'd almost convinced myself to tell him I was leaving. But the look on his face stopped me cold. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Your ex-boyfriend is downstairs." Dante's voice was carefully controlled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Marcus Thornton. He came in asking about you, showing your picture to my staff." The room tilted. "How did he find me? Does he have access to your phone? Can he track it?" I thought about the phone plan Marcus had insisted on setting up, the family account that gave him access to everything. Yes. God, yes, I didn't even think about it. "Give it to me." Dante held out his hand, and I passed over the device without hesitation. He removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and pocketed the pieces. "That stops the tracking. But he's already here, which means we need to deal with this now. I'll talk to him. Tell him to leave me alone." Even as I said it, I knew how futile it sounded. Marcus didn't accept boundaries. "He's not alone," Dante said quietly. "He brought 2 men with him. Security, from the looks of it. Professional." My heart hammered against my ribs. "He's trying to intimidate you into giving me up. He's failing." Dante moved closer, and I caught that cedar scent again, warm and grounding. "But I want you to understand something, Claire. If I go down there and handle this my way, there's no going back. Your ex-boyfriend will leave here knowing you're under my protection. He'll understand what that means in my world. And he'll never bother you again." "What will you do to him?" I whispered. "Nothing permanent. Just memorable enough that he gets the message." Dante's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. "But once I do this, you're tied to me. To my family, my business, my world. People will know you're connected to the Valentinos. That comes with its own complications." I should have been terrified. Should have chosen the devil I knew over the one I didn't. But standing there with Dante's hand warm against my skin, his dark eyes promising protection I'd never truly had, I realized I'd already made my choice the moment I'd walked through his door last night. "Do it," I said. "Make him leave me alone." Something fierce and possessive flashed in Dante's eyes. He leaned down, his forehead touching mine for just a moment, a gesture so intimate it stole my breath. "Stay here. Don't come downstairs no matter what you hear. Understand?" I nodded, and he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that felt like a turning point. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear anything from below, but the old building's thick walls muffled most sounds. Minutes crawled by. Then I heard it, muffled but unmistakable, Marcus's voice, raised and angry. "I know she's here. Just let me talk to her. This is a private matter between us." Dante's response was too quiet to make out, but the tone was unmistakable, dangerous, final. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus again, his lawyer voice coming out, the one he used to intimidate and control. "I have connections. Friends in the DA's office, the police commissioner. You really want to make an enemy of me over some girl?" The crash that followed made me jump. Breaking glass, a shout, then silence so heavy it felt suffocating. I pressed closer to the door, my heart in my throat. When Dante's voice finally came, it was clear enough to hear, cold as winter. "Let me explain something to you, counselor. In your world, you have influence. Connections. The ability to make phone calls and cause problems. In my world, those things mean nothing. You walk into my establishment, disrespect me in front of my people, and threaten someone under my protection? The only reason you're walking out of here is because I'm allowing it. You're threatening me?" Marcus's voice had lost some of its confidence. "I'm educating you." A pause, then, "Claire doesn't belong to you anymore. She never did, though you tried to make her believe otherwise. If you contact her again, if you even think about her, I'll know. And next time, I won't be so understanding. Do we have an agreement? Silence. Then Marcus, quieter, who the hell are you? Someone you should have been smart enough not to cross. Now get out. And take your security theater with you. Footsteps, the sound of the bar's door opening and closing, then nothing. I waited, hardly breathing, until Dante's familiar knock came at the door. When I opened it, he looked exactly the same as when he'd left, but there was something different in his eyes, a darkness that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had always been there, and I was only now seeing it clearly. It's done, he said simply. What did you do? Convinced him that his best option was to forget you exist. Dante stepped inside, and I noticed blood on his knuckles, not much, but enough. He won't be back. I should have asked more questions. Should have demanded details. Instead, I found myself reaching for his hand, examining the split skin across his knuckles. You're hurt. It's nothing. But he didn't pull away as I led him to the bathroom, found the first aid kit under the sink, and cleaned the wound with careful precision. We didn't speak as I worked, but the silence felt charged with something I didn't have words for. Dante watched me with an intensity that made my hands tremble slightly, and when I finally met his eyes, the air between us crackled with tension that had nothing to do with Marcus or danger or the complicated world we'd stumbled into together. Claire, he said softly, his free hand coming up to tangle in my hair. You should run from me. You should find somewhere safe, somewhere far from this world. I'm not a good man. You're a better man than the good one I left, I whispered. You've shown me more respect in 24 hours than Marcus did in 3 years. That's a dangerously low bar. Maybe. I finished bandaging his hand, but didn't let go. Or maybe I'm just tired of letting fear make my decisions. Marcus made me afraid of my own shadow. I won't let anyone else do that, not even you. Something in his expression shifted, softened. You're stronger than you know. I'm figuring that out. I looked down at our joined hands, his bandaged, mine steady. What happens now? Now, Dante said, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist, you have a choice. I can set you up somewhere safe, give you enough money to start over, and you never have to see me again. Or you stay. You let me help you build something new. And we see where this goes. His eyes searched mine. But you need to understand what you'd be choosing. My life isn't simple. There are enemies, complications, dangers I can't always predict. The people I care about become targets. It's not fair, and it's not safe, but it's the truth. My heart hammered in my chest. Every rational thought screamed that this was madness, that I was jumping from one dangerous situation into another. But standing there with Dante's hand warm in mine, I realized the difference was choice. Marcus had taken my choices away piece by piece until I'd forgotten I had any. Dante was offering me one, clearly and honestly, with all the risks laid bare. I want to stay, I said, my voice steady despite the fear and anticipation coursing through me. At least for now. I want to see who I can be without Marcus's voice in my head. And I faltered, not sure how to articulate the pull I felt toward this man who defended me without being asked, who'd shown me kindness without expectation. What do you want, Claire? His voice was rough, and he'd moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. To not be afraid anymore. To feel something real. I looked up at him, at those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I'd ever built. To understand why a stranger cares more about my safety than the man I lived with for 3 years. You're not a stranger anymore. Dante's hand cupped my face, his touch gentle despite the violence I knew those hands were capable of. The moment you walked into my bar, everything changed. I just didn't know it yet. The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. His lips met mine with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him, a careful exploration that asked permission even as it claimed. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt as 3 years of suppressed emotion and need and longing poured out of me. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. This complicates things. Everything about this is already complicated, I pointed out, and felt his quiet laugh against my lips. True. He pulled back slightly, his hands still cradling my face. But now we do this right. You're not hiding in an apartment above a bar. You're staying in my home, where I can protect you properly. And we figure out the rest as we go. Your home. I echoed. I have a house outside the city. Private, secure, comfortable. You'll have your own space, your own room. No pressure, no expectations. Just safety while you figure out your next steps. It should have felt like another cage. Instead, it felt like breathing room. Okay, I said. But I need to do something for myself too. Get a job, rebuild my life. I won't be dependent on anyone ever again. I'd expect nothing less. Pride colored his voice. In fact, I might have a position available. The bar needs a new manager for the evening shift. Someone with marketing experience who understands customer service. Interested? I studied his face, looking for pity or condescension, but found only genuine offer. You're serious. Completely. And before you think it's charity, know that I've been looking for someone for weeks. Rose has been handling it, and she's ready to kill me for the extra hours. A laugh bubbled up, unexpected and genuine. Then yes. I'm interested. Good. He kissed me again, quick and hard, then stepped back before we could get carried away. Pack what little you have. We'll get you proper things later. Right now, I want you somewhere more secure before Marcus decides to try again with reinforcements. The mention of Marcus sobered me, reality crashing back. Do you really think he'd do that? Men like your ex don't give up easily. Especially when their control is threatened. Dante's expression hardened. But he'll learn. They all do eventually. As I gathered my few belongings, my phone's shattered SIM card a reminder of everything I'd left behind, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked different somehow. Disheveled still, but there was something in my eyes that hadn't been there before. Not just fear or exhaustion, but determination. Strength I'd forgotten I possessed. Dante appeared in the doorway, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Having second thoughts? Third and fourth thoughts, I admitted. But I'm still here. That's all that matters. He held out his hand, and I took it, letting him lead me down the back stairs to where a black car waited in the alley behind the bar. As we pulled away from Valentino's, leaving behind the only refuge I'd known since escaping Marcus, I didn't look back. Whatever came next, whoever Dante Valentino truly was beneath the carefully controlled exterior, I'd chosen this path with open eyes. For the first time in years, I was making my own decisions, claiming my own agency. And if that path led deeper into a world of danger and moral ambiguity, at least it would be my choice to walk it. At least I'd be choosing someone who saw me as an equal worth protecting, rather than a possession to control. The city blurred past the car windows, and beside me, Dante's hand found mine again, warm and solid and real. Whatever tomorrow brought, tonight I was choosing myself. And maybe, just maybe, I was choosing him too. Dante's home wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something ostentatious, a mansion dripping with wealth and intimidation. Instead, the car pulled up to a renovated brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, elegant but understated, with flower boxes in the windows and a red door that looked almost welcoming. The kind of place where you'd expect to find a normal family, not a man who ran criminal operations across the East Coast. This is where you live? I asked as he helped me from the car. Disappointing? There was amusement in his voice. Surprising. I studied the building, the way it fit seamlessly into the tree-lined street. I expected something more, fortress-like. I have those too. He guided me up the steps with a hand at the small of my back. But this is home. The place I come to when I need to remember who I am underneath everything else. The interior matched the exterior's understated elegance. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive, though I suspected it was both. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that showed actual wear, and photographs dotted the surfaces, images of people who shared Dante's dark eyes and strong features. "Your family?" I asked, picking up a frame that showed a younger Dante with an older couple and a girl who looked about 12. "My parents and my sister, Lucia." His voice softened. "That was taken 5 years ago, before my father died." "I'm sorry." "He lived the life he chose. Died protecting what mattered to him." Dante took the photo from me, studying it with an expression I couldn't read. "He taught me that in our world, loyalty is everything. That the people we love are both our greatest strength and our most dangerous weakness." I thought about Marcus, about how he'd used my love against me, twisted it into a weapon for control. "That sounds lonely." "It is." He set the photo down. "Which is why most people in my position don't let anyone get close. It's safer that way. For everyone. But you let me in." The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Dante moved closer, his hand coming up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "I did. Against every rule I've lived by, every lesson I learned. From the moment you walked into my bar, looking broken but not defeated, I couldn't help myself." "That scares you," I observed, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "Terrifies me," he admitted. "Because now you're a target. Anyone who wants to hurt me knows the fastest way is through the people I care about. And I care about you, Claire. More than is wise, more than is safe." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his entire demeanor shifted, the softness evaporating into cold professionalism. "I need to take this. Make yourself comfortable. There's food in the kitchen, and the guest room is upstairs, second door on the right." He disappeared into what looked like a study, and I was left alone in the stranger's home that somehow felt safer than anywhere I'd been in years. I explored slowly, respectfully, trying to understand the man who'd upended my life in the span of a single night. The kitchen was modern and well-stocked, evidence that Dante actually used it rather than just ordering takeout. The living room had a worn leather chair positioned by the window with a reading lamp and a book left open on the arm, a thriller by an author I'd never heard of. Upstairs, the guest room was simple but comfortable, with fresh linens and an ensuite bathroom that rivaled luxury hotels. I was unpacking my pathetic collection of belongings when raised voices drifted up from below. Dante's, angry and controlled, and another man's voice I didn't recognize. Curiosity and concern warred with the knowledge that I should probably stay out of whatever this was, but when I heard my name mentioned, all restraint evaporated. I crept to the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. "You brought a civilian into your home?" The unknown voice was incredulous. "Dante, what were you thinking? After everything with Vincent's crew, you make yourself vulnerable like this? Claire is under my protection. That's not negotiable." Dante's tone brooked no argument. "Protection is one thing. Taking her into your personal space is another. Do you have any idea what the other families will think? That you're getting soft, that you're compromised. They'll see her as a weakness to exploit. Let them try." The threat in those 3 words was unmistakable. "Anyone who touches her answers to me directly. This is about more than just one woman, Dante. We have the Petrov situation to handle, the shipment coming in next week, the territorial dispute with the Calabrese family. You can't afford distractions right now." A pause, heavy with tension. "Marco, you've been my second for 8 years. My friend longer than that. So I'm going to say this once, and I need you to hear me. Claire is not a distraction. She's not a liability. She's someone I'm choosing to have in my life, and that decision isn't up for debate. And when Petrov finds out?" Marco's voice dropped. "When he realizes the man who controls half the East Coast has someone he cares about. You think he won't use that against you? Especially after you refused his alliance proposal? Then I'll handle Petrov. Like I've handled every other threat to my territory and my people. You're talking about going to war over a woman you've known for less than 48 hours. I'm talking about protecting what's mine. Dante's voice was steel. If that leads to war, so be it. But I won't live my life in fear of what might happen. My father taught me that power comes from strength, yes, but also from knowing what you're willing to fight for. I'm willing to fight for her. I pressed my hand to my mouth, torn between being moved by his declaration and horrified by the implications. I'd escaped one man who'd made me the center of his obsessive control, and here was another willing to start a war over me. But the difference, I was beginning to understand, was choice. Dante wasn't controlling me. He was choosing to stand between me and danger, offering protection without demanding my autonomy in return. Footsteps approached the stairs, and I barely made it back to the guest room before Dante appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted, the weight of his world visible in the set of his shoulders. "You heard," he said. Not a question. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard my name and, don't apologize." He moved into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You have a right to know what you're walking into. Marco's right about the risks. Having you here, caring about you, it makes me vulnerable in ways I haven't been since Lucia." I sat beside him, our shoulders touching. "What happened to your sister?" His jaw tightened. "She fell in love with someone from a rival family. My father forbade it, said it was too dangerous, that loyalty to the family came first. She ran away with him anyway." He paused, his hands clenching. "They were found 3 days later. Both dead. Petrov's doing, though we could never prove it. He wanted to send a message about what happens when families try to unite against him." "Dante, I'm so sorry. I swore after that I'd never let anyone get close enough to be used against me. That I'd never put someone I cared about in that kind of danger." He turned to look at me, his dark eyes haunted. "And yet here you are. And I find I can't let you go, even knowing what it might cost." I took his hand, feeling the bandage I'd placed there earlier. "Then don't. But don't treat me like I'm fragile either. I'm not some damsel who needs to be locked away for her own safety. If I'm choosing this life, your life, then let me choose it fully. Teach me how to survive in your world. Let me be strong enough to stand beside you, not just behind you." Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to respect. "You understand what you're asking? This isn't a game, Claire. The people in my world, they don't forgive weakness. And they'll test you, try to find ways to break you, to use you against me. Let them try." I echoed his earlier words. I survived 3 years with Marcus convincing me I was weak, that I needed him to function. I'm done being underestimated. By him, by your enemies, even by you if that's what you're doing. Dante's hand cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "I'm not underestimating you. I'm terrified of you. Of what you make me feel, what I'm willing to risk for you. Do you know how long it's been since I was afraid of anything?" "Then we're both terrified," I whispered. "But maybe that means we're both brave enough to try anyway." The kiss was different this time, deeper, more desperate. His hands tangled in my hair as mine clutched his shoulders, both of us trying to find something solid in a world that felt like it was shifting beneath our feet. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard, and I could see the war raging behind his eyes. "I need to handle the Petrov situation," he said finally. "Before it escalates. Before he decides to make a move against you to get to me." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago. End this." He stood, his decision made. "But I need you to promise me something. While I'm handling this, you stay here. You don't leave, you don't answer the door for anyone except Rosa, she'll be coming by to stay with you. And if anything happens, if you feel unsafe for any reason, you call this number." He handed me a card with a single phone number written on it. "That's Marco. Whatever else he thinks about this situation, he'll protect you with his life if I ask him to." "When are you leaving?" "Tonight. The longer I wait, the more time Petrov has to make his move." He pulled me close, pressing his lips to my forehead. I'll be back before morning. And when I return, we're going to figure out what this is between us. No more running, no more hiding. Just honesty. Dante. I grabbed his hand as he turned to leave. Come back to me. Whatever you have to do out there, just come back. Always, he promised, and then he was gone, leaving me alone in a stranger's house that was starting to feel like home. Rosa arrived within the hour, a formidable woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a shoulder holster that made it clear she was more than just a housekeeper. She made us both coffee and settled into the living room with a book, her presence both comforting and slightly terrifying. You care for him, she said after a while, not looking up from her reading. I barely know him, I replied, but even I could hear how hollow it sounded. Time doesn't always matter. My husband and I knew within days that we'd spend our lives together. She finally looked at me. 43 years we had before cancer took him. Not enough, but also everything. Dante is like a son to me. I've watched him build walls so high even sunlight couldn't get through. And then you walked into his bar. I'm scared, I admitted. Of what I feel, of what it means, of what it could cost. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. Rosa set her book aside. But don't let it paralyze you. Dante's world is dangerous, yes. But he's a good man in a bad business, and those are rare. If you can see that, if you can love him anyway, then you're stronger than most. The hours crawled by. Rosa made dinner that I barely touched, my stomach too knotted with anxiety. Every sound made me jump, convinced it was news that something had gone wrong. By midnight, I'd worn a path in the living room carpet from pacing. When the door finally opened at 2 a.m, I nearly collapsed with relief. Dante stood in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, his shirt torn and bloodstained, a cut above his eyebrow that was already swelling. But he was alive, and he was home. Rosa took one look at him and disappeared upstairs, giving us privacy. I rushed to Dante, my hands hovering over his injuries, not sure where to touch without causing pain. I'm okay, he said, catching my hands. Most of this isn't my blood. That's not as comforting as you think it is. I led him to the kitchen, gathering supplies to clean him up, the role reversal from that morning not lost on either of us. What happened? Petrov won't be a problem anymore. He winced as I cleaned the cut on his eyebrow. We came to an understanding. You killed him. No. Dante caught my hand, making me look at him. I could have. Maybe I should have. But I remembered what you said about standing beside you, not behind you. About being better. So I gave him a choice, leave the East Coast entirely and never return, or face a war he couldn't win. He chose wisely. I stared at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. He'd shown mercy, something I suspected didn't come easily in his world, and he'd done it because of me. Because I'd challenged him to be more than just the violence his position required. There will be others, he continued. There always are. People who see vulnerability and want to exploit it. But I need you to know something, Claire. I'm not doing this because you're weak and need protection. I'm doing it because you're strong and deserve to live without fear. There's a difference. I know. I finished bandaging his eyebrow, my hands gentle. Just like I know that choosing you doesn't make me dependent. It makes me brave. Because loving someone in your world takes more courage than I knew I had. Loving? His voice was rough, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard. Yes. I met his eyes without flinching. I know it's fast, I know it's probably crazy, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel. I love you, Dante Valentino. And I'm choosing to stay, to build a life here, to be part of your world. Not because I'm running from Marcus, but because I'm running towards something real. He pulled me into his arms, careful of his injuries, and I felt his shoulders shake with something that might have been laughter or tears or both. I love you too. God help us both, but I do. I think I started falling the moment you asked me to trust you with that drink, like you were giving me a test and didn't even know it. We stood there in his kitchen, wrapped in each other, two broken people who'd found something whole in the wreckage. Outside, the city continued its endless cycle of violence and beauty, danger and opportunity. Inside, we'd carved out something precious and fragile and worth protecting. The next morning, I woke in Dante's bed, sunlight streaming through windows I didn't remember closing. He was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. "I have something for you," he said, reaching for the nightstand. He handed me a small box, and inside was a key. "To this house. And to the bar. You said you wanted to build a life here. So let's build it together." I turned the key over in my palm, this tiny piece of metal that represented so much more than access to buildings. It was trust, partnership, a future I hadn't dared imagine 48 hours ago. "There's one more thing," Dante continued. "Marcus won't stop looking for you, and even with the warning I gave him, desperation makes people stupid. So I've had Marco set up a new identity for you. New name, new documentation, everything you need to disappear if you choose to. Or," he paused, his eyes searching mine, "you keep your name and let the world know you're with me. Let my protection be public, unmistakable. It's riskier, but it's also honest." I thought about it, about all the years I'd spent hiding parts of myself to make Marcus happy, molding myself into whatever shape would keep the peace. And I realized I was done hiding. "I keep my name," I said firmly. "Claire Donovan chose to leave her old life. Claire Donovan chose you. I'm not hiding anymore." The smile that broke across Dante's face was worth every risk, every danger, every uncertain tomorrow we'd face together. He kissed me slow and deep, a promise and a claiming all at once. 3 months later, I stood behind the bar at Valentino's, mixing drinks with the confidence that came from practice and Dante's patient teaching. The evening shift was my domain now, and I'd transformed the space into something that reflected both of us, his elegance and my warmth, his strength and my resilience. Marcus had tried twice more to contact me, and twice more Dante had made it clear what would happen if he persisted. The last I'd heard, he'd moved to California, his career suffering after questions about his behavior surfaced mysteriously in legal circles. I should have felt guilty about his downfall, but I'd learned that some people's destruction was their own doing, not my responsibility. The world Dante inhabited was still dangerous, still complicated, still morally gray in ways that challenged everything I'd once believed. But I'd learned to navigate it, not by becoming hard like the people around us, but by staying soft in the ways that mattered while developing steel where I needed it. "You look happy," Rosa observed, wiping down the bar beside me. "Happier than I've ever seen Dante, too." "I am happy," I admitted. "Terrified sometimes, challenged constantly, but happy." "Is that normal? In this life?" "That's as close to normal as you get." She patted my hand. "You've been good for him. Good for all of us. You remind us that this world doesn't have to be all darkness, that love can exist even here." That night, as Dante and I walked home through streets that no longer frightened me, his arm around my shoulders and my head on his chest, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From Marcus's rage to a wrong text message, from Dante's bar to his bed, from victim to partner to something I was still learning to define. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "About how one mistake led me exactly where I needed to be. About how the worst night of my life became the beginning of the best one." "That's very philosophical for someone who just served whiskey to half the Italian mob," he teased, but I could hear the emotion beneath the humor. "I contain multitudes," I replied, and he laughed, the sound rich and genuine. We'd built something real from broken pieces, found love in the ruins of my old life and the complications of his. It wasn't perfect, wasn't safe, wasn't anything like the fairy tales promised. But it was ours, forged in fire and tempered by choice, and that made it more valuable than anything I'd ever had before. The future stretched before us, uncertain and dangerous and beautiful. But we'd face it together, two people who'd learned that sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards, that love in a world of darkness shines all the brighter, and that choosing each other every day was the bravest thing we could do. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.